Hey, this is Pops hanging out in the man cave. The TV screaming in the background. Well, I've been working on this little guy here. Can you? Yeah, there you can kind of see. K301 Kohler, 12 horse. Now, I had a video I deleted because I got the designation wrong. But let me see if I can get this completely straight here. This Kohler had what they called the K series of engines. And they started at 4 horsepower. And I think they went 4, 6, and 8. And that was a small frame version. But the 4 horse was different than the 6 and the 8. And then the 10 horse, 10, 12, 14 were the 12 and the 14 were almost identical. The only difference was the bore size. That's it. The 16, I think, was, again, just a bore size change. But I'm going to try to go with the designations as I remember them. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's close. I believe the 4 horse was a K91, 9 cubic inch. The 6 horse, I think, was a K161, or no, 141, 14 cubic inch, 9 cubic inch, 14. The 8 horse is either a K161 or 181. I'm not 100% certain. I believe it was a 181 because I have it in the wheel horse out there. An old C85 wheel horse. Runs beautiful. It's closer in design to the larger engines. The next one after that, the 4 horse was its own. The 6 and the 8 were similar, if nearly identical actually. Now 10, 12, and 14, and even the 16, our base design is identical. The 12 and the 14, literally the only difference is the bore. The valves are the same, crank, everything. What are their designations? The 10 horse, K241. 10 horse is K241. The 12 horse is K301. The 14 horse, K321. The 16 horse, K341. And then the 18 horse, I believe, was K361. That's 24 cubic inch, 30 cubic inch, 32 cubic inch, 34 cubic inch, 36 cubic inch. Then the larger engines they had back in this particular day that these engines were out, I think there was a 532, which was 53 cubic inch, twin cylinder, and a 582, which was 58 cubic inch, twin cylinder opposed, cast iron. Now, after that, to lighten things up, Kohler tried going aluminum with a KT17 and KT19. Good running engines, but some jackass got the bright idea of the oil pickup tube being in the side of the block. And I believe it was either in the front face of the block, right below the crank, or in the back, right below the crank. Now, that makes very little difference except for one thing. When you tilt, that's going to be almost the same as in the front. But if you bring it down near the ad mark, not to the ad mark, but near it, then you tilt forward and to the side going downhill like you're going down a slope and around. It could starve with plenty of oil in it. And they were known to blow for no reason at all. So they rebuilt those and came up with an 18 horse and a 20 horse to replace them. And I don't think they call them KT series anymore, but they may have. And then they've got all kinds of funky numbers from here on up because they're overhead valves and they're all, I think everything after that was aluminum block. These were completely replaced in the Cadet series when I was in Cadets in the mid 1980s. Just as MTD was buying them out, they switched over to almost half the line or more was aluminum block Briggs & Strattons. In fact, the 1100, the 482, and I think the 582 was a twin cylinder Briggs. The 482 was 11 horse Briggs, single cylinder. And they were putting Briggs in a lot of them. The small ones already had Briggs & Strattons, 182, 282s, 382s, that series. That was a nice small series. But if you looked underneath and saw how they put the belts on them, scare the crap out of you. The funny thing of it is, you fast forward now 45 years, and I was working on a Kubota, I think a T series, can't remember if it was a T or a G series. And if you saw how the belt was put in there for the drive, blow your mind. It'd make those little cadets, the 100, 200, 300 series, it'd make them look like they were genius. Simplicity. Just the genius of simplistics. Yeah, scary. And the Kubotas, they know what they're doing. So anyway, that's something I figured I'd throw out there for now. There's a lot more to all of this, and I even think Kohler had a much larger engine, the 600 series, like a 60-something cubic inch, as I remember, but that's a long, long time ago. But this one being a single cylinder, 10 horsepower, K301, there's a lot of parts out there for those still, especially aftermarket. I don't think you can get much Kohler anymore. And then they're quite reliable if they're cared for. Now, for those of you that are going to start the argument, SAE 30 non-detergent oil. If you have that in your mind and you just said it and you're dumb enough to actually sit there and tap it out in the keyboard that that's the only oil in these engines, please don't. Because I'll say it right now, you're a complete dynamic imbecile. None of the manufacturers have recommended non-detergent oils in small engines in 60 plus years. You heard me. 60 plus years. In the 50s, when the detergent oils came out, they were recommended because they had wear additives and they could keep the engine clean. And the air-cooled need to be two things: clean, and they needed stout oil. So the additives and the multi-viscosities actually helped. But still, you need detergent oil, and these do prefer normal high detergent oil, SAE 30. But if you're one of those people that's running the all-fleet 1540 like Valvoline has, great. That's even better. You see, listen to me carefully. In the wintertime, if your oil is thick, and it doesn't happen often, but it has happened in the past, you have oil that's thick, you're out there in severe cold, and you crank that sucker over, and that dipper comes down and hits that honey down in there. Or that big block of gel when it's 20 degrees and below. You hear me? You hear what I'm saying? I have torn these engines apart in the past, those dippers laying in the bottom, and nobody knew why. That's one reason why. So, you say, well, when it blows a rod, no, it doesn't always tear the dipper off. But I have seen it. So, only one or two I actually saw that they squeaked and just plain stopped, and the dipper was laying in the bottom. And they were known to break off. You had to be careful when you're torquing the rod. But that's one of the reasons you do not run SAE 30 oil in these things anymore, period, ever. Now, if you're running it and it's working for you, knock yourself out. I'm not sitting here for an argument. I frankly don't care. I really don't. I give you the recommendations of my 45 years of playing with this, actually longer than that, but my 45 professional years of playing with this stuff. It's just a fact of life. The newer Briggs & Stratton, I actually saw one that recommended SAE 30 in the exact same engine in a different area with a almost identical handbook, an owner's manual, said 10W30 synthetic. So don't tell me you can't run synthetic in these. And for you naysayers out there, my 149 Cadet with a K321 for the past 20 years has almost, not every year, but most years, I'm going to say probably 3/4 plus of the time, depending on what I had in stock and what I could afford at the time, has run 10W30 synthetic the whole time. Well, you aren't doing much with it. You're retired. I'm going to say 18 or 19 out of those 20 years that tractor plowed every spring. I mean, argue with me if you want. Nice garden down here that was probably 40 by 60 in that neighborhood. And last year it plowed up two separate small gardens. And actually, did it get up here? Yeah, I did plow up here still. And then I ran the fence around it. So, and it's going to do the same, similar plowing next year. It's similar, because up here I think I have a 20, I'm going to say 20 by 40, roughly. And then down below, I think that one is 25 by 50 or 20 by 50. Can't remember. I haven't actually measured it out, but it's in those size ranges. So the Cadet hasn't been babied. I used to pull roots with it. Debbie wanted something plowed up here, and I went in and I had to pull up, and I was plowing up 3/4 inch roots. And it was hard, but it plowed them up. I mean, it tore them. It's been a tough tractor. One year I did something to it, forgot what it was, and I pulled a bolt out of the rear on the hitch itself. So I had to fix that, and got that fixed and back up and running. And fortunately, there was enough metal there. It was a very thin section in a case and around a bolt hole. So I just put a longer bolt and tapped it deeper with a bottoming tap and ran the bolt in there deeper with some Loctite, and there she is for the last 4 or 5 years. Still plowing, or cultivating, or hilling potatoes, or running potato plow, or just plain pulling a 4x7 load of wood up to 1,000 pounds. So it's when it's used, it's used. But then again, I also have the 8-horse, and I've got the new 12-horse Ford LGT 120 too, as well. So yeah, it's getting retired to some extent, but over the years it's done well. I don't believe I've ever had 15W40 in it. And if I did, it would have been a Valvoline Fleet, which is designed for both gas and diesel. Anyway, that's just to cover something that's a common argument that people have everywhere. Now, that exhaust elbow, am I going to get that out? I may make a couple of attempts at it and then leave it, but first I have to get that clutch housing off of there and the starter generator pulley. As far as heat stuff, but that bracket, starter generator bracket's next. Get that stuff off, and then I'll flip it over and get the oil pan off. By that time it won't matter, because I have to get the crank out to get the cam out. But I can get the cam rod out before that, which is not smart until you get the crank out. I remember the order. Nice without balance weights, let me tell you. You folks have a good day. And what did I have on the bottom? I wish I could show you much, but let me see if you can see it. See the blue arms there? That's a automatic transmission mount from back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, it was designed to put the transmission sideways on here, so the tail and housing, and you could roll the thing over when it was bolted to the oil pan rails. Well, the engine's on there, sitting pretty nice. And it's exposed at the bottom so I could drain the oil. And when I get the pan off, then I'll bolt it right back on there because I'll need to hone it. Yeah, I'll be able to turn it 90 degrees and hone the thing with a rigid hone and see what's left of that cylinder. Having fun today. You folks be good. It's got to be darn near lunchtime.